Test. There we go.
Okay. As long as you...
Thinking about ministry, we've had conversations. Keep my language clean. All right, good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
I am Vicar Paul Ritter, and if you're wondering what on earth is a vicar, it is just a Latin word that essentially means substitute. So I am the guy who is substituting for your pastor. The Wells uses the term vicar as someone who is a seminarian, who is, you even warned me, the Wells uses the term vicar as a seminarian student who is in their third year of seminary school, and this is essentially my intern year where I learn a lot of practical, hands-on type things, so teaching, preaching, shut-in calls, memorizing the consecration, how to consecrate the elements, stuff like that. I am 27. My birthday is September 13th, so I'm very shortly be turning 28. Let's see. I am from Rockford, Illinois. I grew up in the public school system, which is where I, in fact, met my wife, Amelia. I sat behind her in health class. I was too shy to talk to her, so of course I had a friend give her my number, and she reached out to me. like a real man, right? And out of high school, I enlisted in the Army National Guard and served in the Guard for, the contract was 8 years, but it was 6 years active, 2 years inactive reserve. I got back home from basic training in Fort Benning, Georgia, and I wanted to be an electrician because most of my family is blue collar, they're in the trades, and I didn't want to be a framer because I didn't want to feel like I was 80 years old when I was 30. So I was like, electrician. However, just like any other trade, when you're the new guy, you do all the crappy work. So I would stick my hands into receptacles and go up ladders, just sweep up messes, and I was thinking, I don't want to do this for the rest of my life. And so I'm desperately thinking, what do I want to do? What do I want to do? Well, in my 8th grade, during confirmation years, my pastor encouraged me, hey, I think you have the aptitudes to become a pastor, and I think you should really consider that. Well, an 8th grader, when they hear that, they say, yeah, right, pastor. You probably say this to everyone, so I didn't take him seriously. I was a very typical preteen and even teenager. But it wasn't until after my experience with the trade, I got to figure out something. Well, I like talking to people, and I remembered that encouragement from my pastor, ministry. So I made the foolish mistake of doing all the research myself. I thought MLC was the seminary. So instead of talking to my pastor, I did it all myself, and I get to MLC, and all of the guys I'm meeting, they're like, yeah, pre-seminary program. We are in the pre-seminary program, all of these pre-seminary classes. And I'm thinking to myself, why do you keep saying pre-seminary? Is this not the seminary? No. That's when I discovered it's 4 years of undergrad and 4 years of seminary school. And so I give my dad a call. Hey, Dad, it turns out I'm going to be gone a little longer than I expected. Now, granted, at this point, I was already 21, starting college, so I was paying it all myself. He's just like, well, it sucks for you. However, it turns out I loved it. And just like anyone who is in school this long and is thinking about a career, there are some of those thoughts. Do I want to do this? Well, this year has solidified my desire. I absolutely want to be a pastor. I love the preaching aspect is cool. However, I prefer teaching much more than the preaching. I get a little bit more dialogue. I see what the congregation is thinking. So teaching is actually my favorite thing. And ultimately, if there's any lesson within my debacle, if you want to call that, finding myself here, if there's any lesson is, if there's any young people you know, encourage them into just simply considering the ministry. Because that simple encouragement is how, humanistically speaking, is how I found myself in this room in front of you guys. It goes a long way. Even if the young person says, yeah, right, the seed is planted, and it does a lot. Let's see, Vicar year. A lot of growth has happened, and as I'm talking to a lot of wise people in here, growth is painful. But you learn a lot at the end of the tunnel, right? Nobody likes to go to the gym and beat up their body, but everyone loves the results afterwards. And that's where I'm finding myself right now. I'm starting to see my spiritual muscles starting to grow, if you will. It was painful. The relationship between my wife and I grew exponentially because we were forced to be in God's Word. It's no secret. We're vicars, so we live under the poverty line. And we live in a one-bedroom apartment, and so there was a lot of stress. And just like any other Christian couple, what do you do when you're stressed? You go to the source of the relief. You go to that well of water. And God responds very loudly. And we grew quite a bit because of this. And so Vicar year has had its pains, but I've loved it. Now, I was talking to Janelle, right? Yes, I remembered your name. Janelle asked me the question, what is ministry like over here on the West Coast compared to that of the ministry in the Midwest, especially Wisconsin, because in Milwaukee, every 2 blocks is a Wells church. You just walk, there's a Wells church, there's a Wells church. Same thing in Michigan, too. Michigan is like the pearl of very sound doctrine. But the question was, what is ministry like out here? It is night and day different. So it seems like a lot of people in the Midwest, they are very familiar with church, liturgy. A lot of them are very doctrinally sound, and so they have a lot more complex questions like the nature of Christ. How does it make sense that Jesus Christ is 100% God and 100% man? It does not, but I don't believe because it makes sense. I believe because God says this is true, right? However, here, on this side of the nation, it seems like it's more, I say this tongue-in-cheek, because the ministry over by, we're very close to Seattle, so there's a lot of Seattle-type progressive thinking, and we have, I don't want to get too descriptive, there are people that I've worked with, that I teach and whatnot, that struggle with the roles of men and women, feminism, the LGBTQ movement. And so it's very interesting that although that is present in the Midwest, it is not as present as it is here. And I think it's because of the progressive type thinking out here in the West. However, what we find is here on the West Coast, you have a lot of people who have no idea what Christianity is all about. The fact that I do nothing to receive eternal life is mind-blowing. And I get to share that with them, And I think in a lot of respects, it's a lot easier to simply share the gospel than it is to argue over the natures of Christ, right? But does that kind of answer your question you asked earlier? It is, what's the term? We're living in a pagan nation, right? We're getting there, but which makes the mission fields very ripe. So it's a very interesting dynamic that's going on, and I think it starts here on the West Coast, and it slowly moves towards the East Coast. That's what I've been told is the trend, but it makes the mission field very ripe and very exciting for a lot of guys who are going to be pastors, because this is exactly what we're talking about in our seminary classes. But yeah, I've just been rambling. Okay. There should have been full disclosure before this started. So Pastor West said it'll simply just start off with your story and then open it up with a Q&A, and then you can go from there. So I don't have a lot of direction. So I'm sorry if this is kind of like all over the place, but do you guys have any questions for me?
We are on the right side of the state. We're not necessarily.
Yes, and which is night and day different. Say again?
It's a little different over here than the state.
Yes, it is, in many respects. Yeah.
What has surprised you most about this Vicar year?
What has surprised me most about Vicar year? How emotionally invested you get involved in people's lives. Which is, I think that's a gift God has given me. I think I can emotionally relate with a lot of people, but it's a double-edged sword. Because on the opposite end, it exhausts you. Especially when you have, I was talking with another couple. We were talking about that family. I don't want to give names, but probably 2 weeks into my Vicar year ministry, a gentleman passed away in his living room. And my supervising pastor calls me and says, "Hey, so-and-so passed. We're going to go do a devotion with the family." And sure enough, firefighters are there, the emergency responders are there, and we walk in, and it's still very real to everyone. And we do a devotion, and I'm just, his body is right there, and it sinks in that it gets very real very fast, and I'm still a brand new vicar at this point. However, at the same time, the family was very receptive to God's word. None of them were really bawling their eyes out. It's a sad moment, but they knew exactly where he was. And I think that was the most surprising thing, that in the midst of all of this suffering is this knowledge that it ends. That's what surprises me. Does that answer your question? Yeah, it's wonderful. Yeah.
Just a personal question. You said you were born on September 13th?
Yes.
Was that a Friday?
I think it was a Thursday, Tuesday or Thursday.
Just Thursday.
Yeah. Good question. Yeah.
Well, I'd like to know what position you played football at MLC.
Oh, I was on the D line. I tried for linebacker, but I wasn't fast enough. So I was on the D line, but I, growing up, played baseball more than I did football, and I played first base, and I also batted cleanup. That's my little brag there. Yeah, I get that question a lot. Yeah.
Are you on the team at Bremerton?
The softball team? I am. I play. There's so many guys on the team that I play not very often, but we won the last time I played. Not that it was because of me, but because I'm certainly not good anymore. But yes, I play for the Bremerton team. Yeah.
So you said your wife is here, but she's probably not, she can be in the service? Can you meet her?
She might be. She'll be picking me up. So right now she is. Yeah, she's making sure the dogs aren't getting into a fight right now. Yeah.
How do you convince a young man to get into the ministry?
That's hard, because most young men are thick-headed and think they know a lot more than they do. And I am just...
Say that again real loud.
A lot of young men are thick-headed and think they know a lot more than they do, I being one of them. But I guess for me, what helped me the most was the fact that my pastor pointed out that you are answering confirmation questions, which is, I mean, a lot of confirmands are there because their parents just asked them to be there. They don't realize how important it is until later on in life. But simply my pastor pointing out that, hey, you do have the skills, and that's encouraging, right? Everyone kind of likes that positive reinforcement. So maybe when you observe a young person who is excelling in something, just positive reinforce them. Hey, I think you are very talented in this, and this would serve you well if you do decide to choose the ministry path. So something along those lines, maybe. Yeah, Mark.
Just when does your vicar year end? I mean, when do you travel back to your finals year at December?
Yes, so I guess there's different ways to answer this, because the 31st is the last day I'm preaching. However, I have a week to say goodbye to everyone. And then we will be leaving the morning of August 8th. Yeah. But my last, and it's hard because in the ministry, like work, I put that in quotations because it's not like I'm swinging a hammer, but my last day of work is the 31st. Anyone else? So after Vicar year, so it's the education process to become a pastor is 4 years of undergrad, 4 years of seminary school. Your seventh year, that is your Vicar year, then you finish out, so we go back to Milwaukee, 1 more year of seminary, and then you get the divine assignment. Yeah. Yeah. Okay, Hebrew for me. So I took Latin, Greek, and Hebrew. So I was a Latin emphasis. And Latin and Greek have a lot in common, besides the fact that they use different alphabet systems, but they have a lot of the same rules. So that made it Latin and Greek was a little easier. Hebrew is a completely different world. And I think my brain is just wired for like the Latin, Greek type languages. Hebrew is, first of all, you read it backwards. And it's Hebrew, to answer your question, Hebrew was much harder for me. Yeah. I think my favorite subject is probably dogmatics when we talk about doctrine. My wife is a personal trainer. Yeah, so she's. I want to say that carefully because I may be a tad overweight. I may be a little heavy. That is not because my wife is a terrible coach. That's because I'm a terrible listener. But she's a personal trainer. However, at the moment right now, she is a what is it called? Manager on duty at the YMCA in Silverdale. Yeah. Yeah, she is. God has blessed her with wonderful planning skills, and I think she'll probably own a business one day and training personal trainers. But yeah, she's in the health and wellness field. Okay. Yes, so that's a good question. So Amelia, my wife, grew up Missouri Synod in so that could mean many different things. However, she grew up in a very conservative Missouri Synod church, so her transition to the Wells was seamless. When she went through the classes, this is everything that her church taught. Because we're both from public school, neither of us are a typical ministry Wells family. And so that makes her not a typical pastor's wife. Doesn't know how to play music, can't read sheet music. But turns out she is a wonderful evangelist. She's evangelized probably more than I have because of her position at the Y. And it's simply just building relationships. And I think a lot of people see Lutherans, especially Wells Lutherans, and they think legalism, like Catholicism, you have to, but that's not the message of Christianity, right? It's the forgiveness of sins because of God's grace. And so it's simply letting her light shine. Hey, she is a normal person. And it leads people to ask questions. So what church do you go to? So what again does your husband do? And then it's almost this we'll call it divine, because I will be walking by, I'll be coming in to work out or whatever, and my wife will be, it's interesting you asked that. Here's my husband. And then we have these conversations. I mean, they're very simple, but my wife, to ultimately answer your question, she's excited. She has very different skills than a typical pastor's wife, and she is very eager to discover, wherever we get assigned, what her role will be. Because she's very introverted. If no one knew she existed, she'd probably be very happy about that. Yeah, sure. She's going to be very terrified, but just fair warning. Yeah. Yeah, I can tell. I feel terrified standing in front of you guys right now. Let's see. I do. I have, I guess this is, I guess I didn't bring that up. So I have an older brother who lives in the Philippines, oldest brother, and then the one under him passed away when I was 20. He had severe PTSD. And could not find help for it. And then my brother above me is a recruiter for the Army, and he is back in Illinois right now. Then there is yours truly, and then I have a younger brother who is at home. Yes, all boys. A lot of wrestling, and a lot of wrestling in the house, and maybe that's why I'm a little bigger, so I could defend myself. However, as an adult, my brothers aren't harassing me as much. But yeah, all boys. And WWE was very popular in the house growing up. Yeah, so I'm half Filipino, in case you guys were wondering. I get that question a lot if I have they just simply asking where my parents are from. So my mom is from the Philippines, and that's why my older brother is there. That's why he's living there right now. Of course I know lumpia. Very good, very good. Yeah, my mom essentially just calls it, because there's not a big Filipino community there, so what is that? So she resorts to calling it an egg roll, because most people know what that is. But, I mean, it's close, but I do know what lumpia is. Very good dish. Let's see, what else haven't I talked about yet? I was an infantryman in the Guard. Infantryman, 11 Bravo. So I specialized in heavy weapons. So I had a tow system. I was in a heavy weapons company. So we were all in Humvees, and I had a tow system sitting right in front of me in the turret, and off to my right. I should probably tell you what a tow system is. Sorry. A tow system, it's essentially a missile system for heavy armored vehicles, specifically designed for destroying tanks. And then on my right, I had a 240, which the rounds in a 240 is a 7.62. So that is close to what, like we have hunters in here, like a 30-06. They're pretty big rounds, and they're coming out really fast. So I had that on my right, and then the tow system in front of me, and so that's what I specialized in. Never deployed, by the grace of God, which is, I say that because if I did deploy, I don't know if I would be a pastor. I do know that deployments change a lot of gentlemen, and so now I have a very interesting set of skills that makes me really cool on a paintball course. One of my buddies got married 2 summers ago, and we're gonna go paintballing, and you don't want to go paintballing with me. But yes, 11 Bravo. I think I wanted to be a firefighter at first. The recruiter said, "No positions for you," and I said, "Well, my older brother's in the infantry. I'll do that." Oh, I didn't do research. I should have done my research, and I probably would have enjoyed my enlistment a little more. Yeah. That is a wonderful question. Yeah, there's two naval installations. There's Bangor, and then there's Kitsap. I can't remember so there's the Navy there, and then there's also JBLM, so Joint Base Lewis McChord, that has Army and Air Force. So we have a lot of military personnel, and I'm able to relate to a lot of them because of my service, which is wonderful. And it turns out the military lifestyle, just moving around a lot and having a wife that has to just show up because she's married to someone in the military, that's a lot. There's a lot in common with the ministry. Moving around a lot. The wife has to do a lot of things simply because she is married to someone in the ministry. And so our family has related with a lot of the military families because of that. Yeah, that's a good question. No, he doesn't, and you don't realize it until after the fact. And I think that's why they say hindsight is 20/20. Yes. Yeah, oh goodness. So Tuesdays and Thursdays. So our church has catechism class, which is different than confirmation class. So catechism class, we teach the catechism to the people in the grade school, which mostly comprise of non-church families. Confirmation class is we teach the catechism for those who are going to become members. So do you see the distinction there? So Tuesdays and Thursdays, I would teach catechism to the grade schoolers, 5th and 6th graders. Tuesday evenings, I would teach confirmation. What else? And then we do like teen groups every once in a while. Wednesdays, we would also do Bible studies. But I think my favorite thing, because growing up in the public school system, you're already exposed to secular ideologies. And so you are forced to take in these ideologies and to wrestle with them. And so a lot of these people in the school, in the Lutheran school, they aren't exposed to that yet. And so what I like doing is just teaching them very simple ways to, how do I receive this information? How am I supposed to think of it as a Christian? And then what's the best way for me to share the gospel with this person? And in fact, I'm leading a Wells Puget Sound teen group event in 2 weeks, and I have 2 workshops that are based upon that for high schoolers who are going into public school or those going into the university. These are the types of arguments that they're going to hear. Typically, people who have these arguments struggle with this type of mentality, and this is a simple way you can share the gospel message with these types of people. I mean, it's not a perfect system because the sinful nature hates God's word. So, but it's going to be I like teaching that the most. I don't know if I even answered your question. Okay, sure. Yeah, I think that's, so we have a plan for everything else in life. We have a plan for how we're going to lose weight. We have a plan for how we're going to get in shape. We have a plan for how I'm going to get out of debt, et cetera, et cetera. And you could look at it on a sheet of paper. You can write it out. And that is good practical advice for the sanctified new person living within you that God has given you. Because of this wonderful faith we have, we can now write a plan. You know, how am I going to keep up with my faith? Some of it might just be as simple as showing up here on a Sunday, which does a lot, right? You have God's word, you have the sacraments. And I think that is good practical advice, right? Just, what is your plan? That's good. I'll use that. Yeah. That's interesting. Out here we're passing through the Dakotas, and I thought to myself, mountains are wonderful. Then we get over to Montana, and I'm like, oh, these are the mountains. And then we live over in the Puget Sound area, and I see mountains every day, and I'm thinking, this is a tiny fraction of what I'm going to see in heaven. Just this feeling of awe, standing at the base of a mountain. Yeah, it is beautiful, especially if the sun ever comes out over there. It is like, I wonder to myself, if this fills me with so much awe, what is heaven going to be like? It blows my mind. Yeah, so it is beautiful out here. However, my wife and I are trying to start a family, and we didn't realize how homesick we would get. And it would be nice if we could if we start out in the Midwest and have parents there to help us, start the family. If not, we're happy wherever we go, to be honest. Yeah, I don't know. I think Texas would be cool. The South Atlantic district would be cool. And ultimately because the sun is out and the weather is warm. Whereas like here it's different on this side of Washington. But over near the Puget Sound, it's like, I probably saw the sun for a total of 7 hours my entire year. Not really, but that does have a huge effect. Not seeing the sun, I thought to myself, okay, yeah, say again? And that's the mistake I made, not taking vitamin D. I saw a hand. That, and that takes, Yes, that takes a lot of. Actually, it should take all of the pressure out of it. However, I'm gonna admit something to you guys. This vicar struggles with sin, and is going to question no matter what. But say again. Yeah, yeah, you look shocked. But ultimately, what you just said takes all of the worry out of it all. That the one who created the world, the one who breathed life essentially into a dirt pile and made man, is also the one saying, this is the place for you. That's comforting. Yeah. Yeah. This is strange. It doesn't feel like I'm getting ready to preach soon. And it feels like I've known you guys for quite some time. Yeah. 1, 2, 3. We'll do that. Yes, that I can go from the Puget Sound to here in Spokane to Rockford, Illinois, to Milwaukee, Wisconsin, to Fort Myer, Florida, and the grace of God, and by the grace of God, true doctrine is being preached. You know, that is wonderful. And what's even more wonderful is that it's all preached with different personalities, but the message is the same. Yeah, that is a wonderful blessing. Your question?
Yeah, the last vicar, one of our last vicars, speaking of location, well, he's down in Meridian, Idaho now.
Okay. Meridian, Idaho, huh?
Next to Boise.
Okay.
Huge church down there, Pastor Snyder.
Okay, yeah. Okay, so that means I've probably met this person. Yeah, Idaho is a beautiful state. Chris Driesbach. I recognize this face. Hello. Okay, so I am Pastor Andy Schwartz, vicar, and you came and you served God's people over there, and I was gone. You made me nervous, so I just didn't show up. I'm only kidding. I just thought I should introduce myself. Hi, Donna. Oh no, I saw the invitation on Pastor West's fridge. Actually, sorry I didn't show up to the wedding. Congratulations, you two. That is awesome. Donna. Okay, awesome. So right now, all we're doing is harassing the vicar with questions about anything about the vicar. So feel free, if a question pops up, to ask it. Yeah. So it's through the synod. I wish I could give you more information on the logistics. So it depends. So I'm technically in a mission setting, and so the congregation covers X amount, and then the synod will cover the rest. And so, for example, and this is how it will work for all vicars. You have rent, and you have to pay at least like $450 of that, and then the rest gets reimbursed by the seminary. So we essentially live off of a stipend, enough to live pretty comfortably, I'd say. I mean, we're not big ballers, if you will, but yeah, it's through the synod. Yes. I do now. No. Oh no. Okay, so I had a similar problem. Okay. No, I didn't. So I had a 1995 Ford Ranger, and it was rear-wheel drive only. And in Wisconsin winters, that means you get stuck all the time. And so I bought a tow strap, not to tow others out, so that others can tow me out. And it finally broke down. It was terrible. By the grace of God, I survived. I was going around a roundabout, and I'm not very good with cars, excuse me, but the wheel essentially came off, what is it, that the knuckle or whatever? So it came off, and I'm going around a roundabout, and I'm like, "Brrr," and it just shuts down. And I had a friend who got me out of the situation, and so I am left without a vehicle right before I have to come out here for Vicar Year. And my wife had this 2010 Honda CR-V, not big enough to transport all of our stuff here. So we had to trade that in, and so now she has a newer vehicle, and I was supposed to purchase my father-in-law's car. Well, that fell through, and with her work and my work, we had to find something. So I actually now have a nice truck now, 2010 Ford F-150, which is pretty cool. Yeah. So I mean, it is a nicer vehicle, but for the longest time, I thought I was going to explode in my previous car. Anyone else? Yes, Rockford, Illinois. It is alive and booming. They just built the name of the facility, I want to say, is called Hayward. As I was moving, I was already in college at this point, so I wasn't really around Rockford much, but it's pulling a lot of people from outside the area into the area because I think they make airplane parts or something. Yeah. Really? Okay. Yeah, it's still around. Okay. Okay.
Yeah, I had to change one in a snowstorm.
Oh, goodness. Well, all right. Yeah, please. My oldest brother's in the Philippines. Yes, and then, so the remaining two are in the Midwest. One of them was trying to move to Alabama, but that fell through, so he had to stay in my parents' basement for a while. But yeah, they're in the Midwest.
You mentioned before that there was a lot of wrestling going on with brothers.
Yeah.
Well, now that you are a year away from being a minister, at family reunions, do they treat you differently because of your choices?
Yeah, they do. Especially so I grew up really close with my cousins as well, and they think that I am less sinful because, and they act very differently, and I'm like, guys, you grew up with me. I am no saint, nor am I a saint now, and so the dynamic is very interesting. Also. So my oldest brother doesn't go to church, and my cousins don't go to church. If they do, it's like a non-denom church. But my older brother will use me as an excuse to get away with things he really shouldn't be doing. It's okay, my brother's a pastor, and so it's okay that he maybe drinks a little too much. So it's like he is receiving grace from God because he's related to me, and that's not how it works. Yeah, and he says it as a joke, but I really wish his jokes were more mature. Yeah.
A lot of Filipino is Catholic.
Yep.
Did your mother grow up Catholic?
Yeah, my mother grew up Catholic, and her mom is Catholic now, my grandma, who actually lives with my mom and dad. And it's really interesting because the Filipino culture is not only the culture of the natives, but because it was conquered by the Spaniards, there's a lot of Catholic Spanish culture mixed in. So it's really hard to separate Catholicism from Filipino culture. And I remember growing up, whenever we would have on Halloween, my mom and grandma would spend the whole day praying to the saints. What else? What are some other? Whenever we would have a party, they would set a plate of food off into a room that no one would be in for spirits. And so it's really interesting to grow up in like this cross-cultural home where it's really hard to take a lot of that stuff out of the Filipino, if you will. Yeah. No, they love it. They love that because my mom is Wells now, and my grandmother's still Catholic, but they love that that I've chosen this route. They're very supportive, very supportive. Yes. How are we doing on time? Okay, 40, 45. Okay. So no, that's a good question. So my dad, his family was actually, they were Presbyterian, and they moved into the Rockford area, and they were looking for a church. And then sure enough, there was a mission start up there, knocking on doors. There is this Wells Lutheran church just down the road. My grandparents started going there. My dad was confirmed in this Wells congregation. And then, like most young men, he stops going for a while, meets my mom, and this might be TMI, but had me out of wedlock. And the pastor said, now, sat with them, and then actually, because of that meeting, he got married, and now my parents, because of that, became regular members of the Wells congregation. Me and my brothers grew up there, and so it's really interesting to see the hand of God working through, even these selfish, sinful actions. Yes, Romans, very good. Yeah. Alrighty. Well, I don't want to keep you guys too long. If you want to fellowship and speak with one another, that would be awesome. Also, it would give me time to rehydrate my throat and be prepared for service. Yeah, of course. Yeah, of course. Save your thanks for after the preaching. If there's any heresy, you could take your thanks back. Yeah, okay, that works. All right. If you guys do have any questions, feel free to ask me while I'm here.